back to part 2 of Talking Body. Also, I would like to let you guys know that I will be providing more resources on the topic in the description bar below. I will be doing that for all the videos throughout the series. Have you ever thought about how gender is at play in your life? Gender is something that not many of us necessarily think about on a day-to-day basis. But unfortunately, there are many people all around the world, and our country included, that don't have the freedom to express themselves the way they would like to. In part 2 of the series, we will be discussing the difference between sex and gender. Because learning about sex, gender, and culture can enhance your appreciation of the interlocking and complex ways in which our society values and practices views of masculinity and femininity, and this can enhance the insight of your own gender identity too.
Did she just say there's a difference between sex and gender?
I thought they were the same thing.
Although in American culture we seem to use the term synonymously, and sex and gender have always worked interdependently, they are indeed very separate terms, and sex is not equal to gender. I can give you guys 2 examples right off the top of my head in ways that in American culture we use sex and gender synonymously. One being on legal forms, government forms, and standardized test forms. A lot of the times the question will say sex/gender, and then it will only say male or female. So that's a way that we as a society have just said that sex and gender is the same thing and it means male or female. And another example that I think maybe you guys might find more relatable is when a couple who's expecting throws a gender reveal party. This should technically be called a sex reveal party. And if that confuses you right now, let me start by clearing some of this stuff up. But disclaimer, considering there are entire fields of study like gender and women's studies, which I am a part of, and also other fields of study that take on the question of gender like sociology, psychology, communication, anthropology, philosophy, and history. Let's just say it's not always a walk in the park discussing these terms, but I'm gonna go ahead and try to break these down in the most simplistic way that I can. And also, I won't be able to cover everything I want to. I say this in every video. It is just an introductory series. So yet again, I will be providing more links below to helpful resources that will hopefully help you understand these terms and how much more there is than just what I'll be talking about today. So let's start off with sex. Sex is most easily defined as the biological. Sex is in a binary system that is based on a person's genitalia, hormones, and chromosomes that classifies and categorizes bodies as either male or female. Sex is what is used medically and legally and is assigned at birth. This may seem like a pretty simple definition at first, but then you have to think about the people who don't fit into the sex binary that the definition of sex describes. There are, I believe the statistic is 1 in every 2,000 people are born intersex, which means that they have ambiguous genitalia, so they don't fit inside the male-female binary that we have set up for our definition of sex. A lot of the time, if a baby is born intersex, then emergency surgery is performed, sometimes without the parent's permission. This surgery is performed to have the baby fit one of our definitions of the traditional male or female body. So for now, let's move on to the definition of gender. Gender is how someone identifies. Gender can be a confusing or tricky term to understand, but simply gender has cultural and social influence while sex is biological. In our culture, when you are born, or even before you are born, you are assigned a sex. Gender assumptions come along with the sex you were assigned. So basically, if you're born with a penis, you're a boy, and if you're born with a vagina, you're a girl. And based on these factors, you are raised with a gender in either a masculine or feminine way. But gender is so much more than just being male or female. It is socially constructed and expressed. Gender is a social category which contains the way we dress, the roles we enact, our style. This comes back to the term social construction, which we learned back in part 1. The difference in thought between social construction and essentialism applies for gender and sex as well. According to Wood, when we essentialize, we mistakenly presume that all members of a sex are alike. Essentializing obscures the range of characteristics possessed by an individual woman and men and conceals differences among members of each sex. I would also argue that essentializing gender and sex yet again leaves out people who do not fit our basic definition of a male and female binary. The ideas of essence can be found in many stereotypes about what traits men and women naturally have, and they are presented as facts about men and women, such as all women are nurturing, passive, submissive, and sweet, and that all men are stoic, unemotional, tough, and strong. If you look around at the different people in your life, I am sure you can find some inconsistencies with these natural traits that we all inherently possess. I personally align with most social constructionists because the ideas of gender as an essence just doesn't leave much wiggle room for people who operate outside of the gender binary. Gender theorist and philosopher Judith Butler has made many contributions to our ideas of sex and gender and how they operate throughout society. Butler states, "Gender is an identity tenuously constituted in time, instituted in an exterior space through a stylized repetition of acts, the mundane way in which bodily gestures, movements, and style constitute the illusion of an abiding gendered self." Butler is arguing two main points here. One being that space and time affect our identities, meaning that since our culture is always transforming, so are our ideas of things like gender and race, i.e., social construction. Think about being a woman in 2018 versus 1960 versus 1802. And secondly, Butler is arguing that gender itself is a performance. We are born male or female, that's sex, but we learn to act in masculine or feminine ways, and that is gender. So are you saying that if I'm a girl and I like to paint my nails, doesn't that mean that I just like to paint my nails, right? Well, not exactly. You have to think about how our world is shaped and how it's influenced you to like what you actually like. Not to say that what you like doesn't make you you. It's just important to critically think about how we are shaped in our society and in our culture. And now let's go back to the fact that gender is not universal in time nor space. It's a construct, right? So just look at our world. The ideas about gender in America are going to differ than the ideas about gender in other countries. A man who in America we might see as more feminine might be considered more masculine in, say, Latin countries. In different cultures there are different variations of gender. Nothing is really set in stone. And also when Butler is arguing that gender is a performance, think about how many social performances and products have been around for such a long time that they seem natural and concrete and we forget to question them. That is what Butler means by the illusion. To say that gender is performative is to say that it's a certain kind of enactment. Butler's words.
Why does it matter if we have a gender binary?
Why does it matter if we synonymously use sex and gender?
There can be / has been deathly consequences throughout time and in our society today for not performing your gender as your assigned sex. Butler states, "We regularly punish those who fail to do their gender right. Consequences and punishments include getting teased by children and adults, not seen as an actual human being, being excluded or not welcome in activities, restaurants, restrooms, renting a home, getting a job, and more. Being corrected, boys don't cry, be a man, being beat up, and even being killed or feeling so depressed and isolated from societal standards and people's perceptions that you decide to end your own life." That is why learning and critically thinking about these subjects is so important. Many cisgendered people do not even fit the gender binary 100% of the time. There are and always have been people who do not fit into the gender binary. So what did we learn today? We learned the definition of sex and how it's biological, and we learned the definition of gender and how it's performed and constructed. We learned that even our definition of sex doesn't include all of the different kinds of people that we have in our world, which also teaches us the importance of language and inclusivity. And lastly, we learned about gender being a performance, how it's something that you can do and enact. It's not always something that just comes as an essence. If you have found this interesting so far, there is so much more to talk about on this topic that I just cannot squeeze into my little introductory video. There are many more resources that you can engage with, like learning what LGBTQIA+ actually stands for and what those terms mean, resources for you like the Gender Unicorn. If you want to dive into some of Judith Butler's readings, they are quite difficult to get through, but very enlightening. And there are a ton of YouTubers who are under the LGBTQIA umbrella who I like to watch personally, and I will link all of these resources for you down below. Thank you guys for watching part 2 of Talking Body, and remember to critically think about what is normal in society.